My husband and I got rid of 80% of our family stuff and adopted a much more simple lifestyle. But the turning point and the aha moment didn't really come until we started tackling our storage space. And so in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you the biggest tips that have helped me get our garage or our storage space under control. And then I'm also going to be sharing with you how I approach sentimental items. This can be a really tricky subject and it's gonna be different for everybody, but I hope that what I have to share helps you start thinking in a way that can really help you get the space under control and working for you, not against you. 'Cause that stuff don't own me. Oh, I'm finally free. Well, hello everyone. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel today for this video. If you're new here, then welcome. My name is Natalie and I love making videos about simple, intentional living, my life as a mom, and that minimalism doesn't have to be scary or intimidating. One of the spots I was most intimidated by though was our garage. It was an absolute wreck. I have an episode in my Messy to Minimal series. I have a couple of episodes actually where we worked out in the garage. These storage spaces, because there are so many different categories of items or purposes for the space, it can become so overwhelming and so intimidating. I hear you. I have absolutely been there, but I have learned some really important things along the way that have totally changed the game. Out in our garage is where I also store a lot of our family's keepsakes and my childhood keepsakes. And so in today's video, I'm going to be diving into that subject a little bit and sharing with you my approach and a couple of the things that really help me decide on what stays and what I need to ultimately part with. Today's video is another in the Clutter-Free January series started by Dawn from The Minimal Mom. We've worked in our kitchens, in our closets and wardrobes. We tackled paper clutter and kids' artwork last week. And today we're doing storage and sentimental items. There are over 20 other YouTubers in this big collab taking on this challenge together. So I will link the playlist in the description box. More videos are going to be added throughout the week. I would love it so much if you would drop this emoji in the comments. Everyone, let me know in the comments right now what your storage space looks like. Is it a bedroom? Is it a storage unit? A garage like ours? Attic, basement? Let me know. And now I'm going to take you out to the garage. I've got my little jacket on because it's cold out there, and I'm just going to give you a little tour of what we've got going on out there, along with the tips and advice that I have if you're looking to get your storage spaces under control and functioning for you. So the first tip that I have for you guys is one that you can actually apply or like exercise, even if you're not standing in your storage space, whatever that room looks like. I'm gonna keep saying garage because that's what applies to us, but you can use that word and change it to whatever works for you. But for us in our garage, it's such a mishmash of different categories of stuff that it could potentially become anything for us. And that potential being left wide open allowed way more clutter to be acquired and to pile up in here. So my first piece of advice is to give the space a mission statement. Basically, what does this space exist for in your life? And it can be multiple purposes, multiple functions, but really working through that and defining it clearly for yourself can really help in what you choose to keep and what you choose to part with. Now, it's going to be different for everybody, but for us in our garage, its main functions are, first of all, storage of our extra things. So like our pantry stock, household items and cleaning supplies, we keep them out here. And before I get any comments about rodents or bugs, we've never had an issue with that. This house is really well sealed out against pests. This shelf holds video making supplies. I have some like lights and equipment and tripods and stuff. I have messy to minimal organizational things. And then we also store decor here because that's a big part of my videos throughout the seasons. It's also a home gym. So my husband has a lot of workout equipment and stuff over there. It's a fully functional home gym that he's been working on over the last decade or so. And then we have the typical stuff in the garage, homeowner stuff to do home maintenance. We've got automotive care, we've got lawn care, like chemicals and stuff like that out here. One of the things we don't keep in the garage are our vehicles. They're older vehicles, and the climate that we live in, it never gets too hot or too cold to safely store our vehicles outside, and the space is much more valuable to us as a home gym and kind of an extension of our living space than it would be to actually park our vehicles in the garage. Up until we really defined what this space was going to be used for, we had garden tools, rakes and shovels and hose, we had kids' bikes in here, and we had our lawnmower in here at one point, and making the boundary of not having that sort of thing in our garage really helped us focus on what we do store in the garage. Which brings me to the next thing that helps so much, which is to create zones for the stuff that you have in your storage space. Before we did all of that decluttering and reorganization and rearrangement in here, we had our categories of stuff helter-skelter. It was all mixed up together. My husband had tools over here, and he had tools in that corner, and then on that shelf. I had houseplants and supplies in every direction. My seasonal decor totes were scattered all throughout the different shelves and stuff, and some were in boxes, some were in bags, and it was difficult to find exactly what I was looking for because the collection was just dispersed throughout the whole space. Before, if my husband or I needed a tool, if we were hanging a picture or something, we would spend 25 minutes looking for something and then spend only 3 to 10 minutes actually using the tool. And that actually led to us purchasing duplicates of items because we couldn't actually find what we had. Creating zones for where those items actually go makes it so there's like this method of deduction when it comes to the possible places it could be. Just a quick note, something that really helps us keep our zones well defined and tidy is to have labels like this, like we have on these shelves, to label the different categories of things. It helps the kids because my boys can read. If it's something that isn't actually my husband's, but he needs to put it away, he can see that it's a piece of fall decor. He puts it in the tote over there, etc. Clearly labeling things really helps. So the next tip that I have for you guys is kind of a mindset shift, or just something to keep in mind as you start to innovate in your storage space. And that is that it's not like the, what is it, Ronco rotisserie. You can't set it and forget it.
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 It's one of those things that takes maintenance. And this is true for really any space that you declutter or innovate or organize. I think it's Catherine from Do It on a Dime who has shared that as many times a day as you access a space is how many times a year you should be decluttering it. And I think that's really very true, and that's a good thing to keep in mind. Maintenance is key when it comes to a lot of spaces, but especially storage spaces. I am out here multiple times every single day, whether it's to grab something food-wise, or I need to restock some, dishwasher detergent for when I'm doing dishes, if I'm grabbing something for a video that I'm making. This is a space, as ugly as it is, it's still an extension of our living space. And if I treat it as such, it works for me, not against me, like I said earlier. So I'm gonna move on inside because it's cold out there. But I do have a couple of other things to share with you when I'm approaching our storage space. And when I've talked to some of you or seen like the messages that you've sent me, it's obvious that the biggest thing that we are collectively dealing with is guilt. And that guilt can present itself in many forms. It might be guilt because you are frustrated that you spent that much money on things that you ultimately didn't end up using. Guilt that you don't want things that family members gave you, whether they had good intentions or not. Guilt, it just like creeps its grimy little fingers into every aspect of the decluttering and decision-making process. You have to ask yourself, this. What is worth the most to me? Is housing this item or this pile of stuff, does that add more worth to my life than having those spaces be clear? Does the guilt of getting rid of something outweigh the peace of having it gone? There's a lot of questions we can ask ourselves about this, and this is kind of where we start to dive into the whole question of things that are sentimental, whether they're heirlooms or things that have been given to us by family members, whether they've passed away or it's just, you know, stuff that your mom gave you from your childhood. You might have totes and totes of it like I did. In a little bit, I am going to show you what the storage of my keepsakes look like, and like, I'm not going to show you every little bit of my collection, but just kind of show you the bulk of it, like what the sum total of my keepsakes looks like. But before we get into that, I just kind of wanted to share with you this idea of guilt being kind of like just this permeating spirit in our lives. And I think one of the best ways to start combating or ditching that guilt is to recognize that guilt is never worth it. Guilt doesn't hold a higher place in our lives. It doesn't take priority over what helps our home and our spaces feel more peaceful and function better. When we are talking about storage spaces, prioritizing for the present has helped me so much with what I choose to keep in the space. This is the part where you just have to be really honest with yourself, which sometimes is hard to do. Most of us keep things in our storage spaces because they are the easy place for us to just throw things that we hope to get to in the future. Sort of this idea of our fantasy self. So in my dreams, I have always wanted to be someone who works with my hands, who paints, who crochets, who does little woodworking, wood burning, stuff like that. Like, I've always been interested in doing that. I never seem to have the time or really the talent for stuff like that. And so I am just like you. I will think I would like to take up knitting again, because I actually did a lot of it in high school. I go to Michael's, I buy several balls of yarn and all, you know, the multi-pack of all the different sizes of knitting needles. I come home, I spend one afternoon watching football knitting, and then that haul of stuff ends up getting shoved right back into the Michael's bag and thrown into my garage somewhere. I cannot tell you how many times I have gone into like a hidden area of my home, a closet or a cabinet, a tote, our garage, our storage area, and have found Michael's bags, these hauls of things, these little collections of things that I tried for a bit and abandoned, spent a lot of money on, which is unfortunate. So when we're prioritizing for the present, we're really honest with ourselves about what is it that I am actually pursuing right now. For me, it's the lights and the camera equipment and the stuff that I access day after day, every single week, multiple times a week. It's the food that I'm feeding my children. It's my husband's pursuit of physical fitness for the home gym that we have out there, and keeping things that don't really deserve a spot because they may happen in the future. It's not worth it to me. It's just not worth it to me. But I would love to know in the comments if there's anything that you guys are holding on to for your fantasy selves. I think this could be a really interesting exercise. When we're thinking about this whole issue of prioritizing for the present and not keeping things for our future fantasy selves, I think it's also equally as important to recognize the things that we're holding on to from our past selves. A lot of our experiences and our memories, they've shaped who we are now. And so it is appropriate and it's a wonderful exercise as a human to be able to even have memories. Like, how cool that God created us to have memories. But I feel like for many of us, myself included, we prioritize keeping material things and every bit and item from our past lives as if our past selves are watching us or even caring that we're holding on to these things. While I recently went through my stash again, I was recognizing these feelings of somehow letting my past self down by not keeping every little thing. A good defining question for me is, does this still serve a purpose in my life today, in the present? And sparking memories is absolutely a good purpose for it to serve. But I quickly realized that many of the items I was coming across, I didn't even know what they were or how I got them or when they first became part of my collection. And when we're dealing with those like really tricky items like letters from past boyfriends or, you know, whatever it is, things that spark bad memories or trigger anxiety of past traumas if you deal with that, or toxic relationships, it's hard to get past those initial feelings that they conjure up to really ask the relevant questions. And I think this creates such an emotional roller coaster. I have so been there. I mean, I was literally there this last weekend as I was going through my stuff. And I think that emotional roller coaster is a big reason why going through old mementos or sentimental items can be such a dreaded task. Whether there are positive or negative feelings that come up when we're looking through this stuff, I think that choosing to ask questions that are non-emotional really helps. And I think the first place to start is to ask, is this thing actually serving a purpose in my life now, even if that purpose is just to spark those memories, good or bad or otherwise. And then we have to ask ourselves, are the memories that this thing is sparking worth the space that it takes to store this item? As a Christian, I pray through a lot of these decisions, and a piece of advice that I can give you as far as sentimental items is that it's probably not the first area of your house that you should be tackling. If you're like embarking on a decluttering journey, it takes such an emotional toll on you sometimes that it can be really discouraging to start in that area, because your brain will just automatically think that decluttering is associated with these negative or like emotionally draining exercises that you're going through. So just a word of advice, but I'm just going to take you back out to the garage now. I'm going to brave the cold and I'm going to show you what we have out there, like how I organize our memories, and then dive into like how I'm going about organizing our kids' memorabilia or like mementos and special little things that they have. Okay, so like I was showing you, we keep the keepsake totes up here at the top. These are them. I had Weston get them down for me. I have one tote for my childhood keepsakes, which I'll show you in a second. And then we have one tote for our Bennett family keepsakes. And this is like the biggest tip that I can give you guys when it comes to, well, really anything, because I actually talked about this in last week's video. It's that budget of space sort of idea, or what Dana K. White calls the container method, where you are giving yourself a physical boundary, a physical budget of space for the stuff that you are choosing to keep. And for me, my goal was to get it down to one of these totes. And as you can see, I did that. And the goal for our family keepsakes is to relegate things to physical boundaries like this. I will show you these in a second, but like for their baby boxes, this is only the amount of stuff that I can keep. I had one of these size boxes and it was just stuffed full of all of these sweet little clothing and outfits and stuff, and it just made a lot more sense to choose just 2 or 3 of the very best and make it fit into here. It takes it from an emotional decision and just makes it very practical. Not, do I want to keep this piece of baby clothing? Do I love this piece of baby clothing? Does this spark joy? It's more about, does it fit into this box along with all of the other things that I'm choosing to keep? And when it doesn't, I just have to choose which one is my favorite. And just doing this is such a game changer. I love that Dana actually coined a term for this concept. I have been calling it a budget of space. I've talked about this in videos before. But I recently cracked open her book, and it's a good one. I have it linked in my description box. Every time I go through this or like peel back the layers of the stuff that I have, it's become clearer and clearer to me like what my most special items are. I'll just show you a couple of them because I think it's fun. My dad got this for me. He went on a business trip to Galveston, Texas. It's too fragile for me to keep out with my kids, but one day I do hope to like take this out of the tote and have it in my bedroom, like on my desk or my vanity. But it's just too precious and fragile right now for me to risk it with 3 young children. But that is something that you can do when dealing with keepsakes is if you just have too much, look for a way to repurpose some of the items that you do find rather than sticking them back into the tote. So this time I went through and found this little like amber glass slipper that is absolutely beautiful. To check with my mom to see if she remembers exactly when I got it. I was very little because when I was little I was obsessed with Cinderella. Now I can keep that on my desk. I put little memory cards, or like if I take my earrings out at night, and it's replacing the little dish that I had there before. And it was the perfect way to use something and display it. And a lot of the time our most precious stuff ends up in a box or a tote, and we never get to actually really enjoy it and see it and have it displayed. Sometimes it's because it's too fragile for the stage of life that we're in to display. But I think it's helpful to remember that these items can still be useful sometimes. Just a couple more things. Look at these little mouse ears from when we went to Disneyland. I think I was 12 or 13. I thought this was funny, this brand, No Boundaries. Anyone remember that brand? And all the 90s kids raised their hand. This is the last I'll show you. Glowworm. This was very precious. I keep this in my baby blanket because I loved to snuggle with those as a kid at night. As I go through this again, I might come across something that's just like, this isn't sentimental to me anymore. Why would I keep this? And when I start having those thoughts or those questions, that is a really good indication to me that it's time to part from those things. But this last round of going through my childhood keepsakes, I found those things, and everything else fits into this tote. I will link the totes that we use, by the way, for our garage. I like that they're all one color. This is our family's tote of keepsakes. At the top of the box, I have our kids' baby boxes, which are so sweet. Oh my gosh. I just have things like their birth announcement, Haley's first pair of glasses that she got, the outfit that they wore when we brought them home from the hospital, a tiny little toy that my boys really enjoyed, just stuff like that. So basically from like birth to 18 months old or so is the stuff that I keep in their baby boxes. I have one bin that's quite full. This is from 2012, which is the year that Weston and I got married, until 2020, last year. And this has tickets, it has Nat and Wes and the Rest t-shirts that we made for our family vlogging channel back when we did that. I have the shoes that I wore at my wedding, the little ring bearer pillow that I made out of scraps of fabric because we forgot to buy a pillow to put the rings on, and the night before my wedding I stayed up sewing that. Old driver's licenses. I have the guest book from our wedding. I don't keep every greeting card or Christmas card. I do keep the ones from like my siblings' first Christmases with their spouse, or their kids' first Christmases if they take pictures and send cards. Then put them in a little bin like this. This is the first 8 years of our marriage and family here. And I have this same size tote at the top of my closet. Sometimes I'll stick it under my bed that I will put the next 8 to 10 years of stuff into that's special to me. This little tote of stuff from 2012 to 2020 is for my memories, and I will go through it with my kids, but it's not something I'd like pass on to them for them to take into their future. But I do have a little system for that, and this is the last thing I'm gonna share with you. This is what I keep. It says kids current mementos. So this is anything like super special to them. So like the wristbands that the boys wore when we took them to Disney World. I also have their little autograph books from the characters that we got autographs from. That was from several years ago. I took the boys to their first movie in the movie theater, and we went to the photo booth and took pictures together. I'm missing one of the little ears from the boys. It's kind of chewed up. Am I raising puppies or children? I swear, my kids chew everything. I'm on the lookout for the second pair of ears, but we have at least one. Like I said in my paper clutter and kids art crafts video last week, I do not keep every scrap of paper. I honestly could feel sentimental toward everything that they bring home from Sunday school or from their little preschool class or they make here at home with me when we're homeschooling. I just try to keep the things that are the most special, that I can anticipate them in the future going, wow, I'm glad mom kept that, versus every little scribble that they make. There's other things in here, little bits and bobs. These are really special, perhaps the most special of all. These are little Polaroid, like the Fujifilm Instax camera that I took of the boys very recently. This was the day that they asked Jesus to be in their heart. A nice little memory of that very special, life-changing day in their young lives. And so that goes up in this box. I want to get it in a fire safe box. I've been researching a bit about like fire safe storage systems, but for now that's where it goes. And this is something that I just have to remind myself, like, yes, the picture of my boys asking Jesus into their heart is so special, but it's not as special as the fact that they ask Jesus into their heart. Even if you're not a Christian, I think we can all agree that this stuff is temporary, that our life is temporary, that the stuff that we have in our homes and in our lives, they're gonna pass away. It's not going to be here forever. So taking too much stock into the actual physical item versus spending that energy somewhere else, investing into the actual living of our lives, and for us as Christians, the eternal life that we will live someday, it's a much more worthwhile pursuit. There is nothing wrong with holding on to things and exercising our sentimentality and really enjoying the process, or even having some pain through the process of looking back through those memories. But it's the memories that are most important, not necessarily the things that spark those memories. So if you are having a tough time getting through sentimental items or choosing what to keep from your kids' artwork, then just take a deep breath and give yourself some grace. Even though your specific situation is very unique to you, you're not alone in how difficult this is. And I hope this video was an encouragement, both on the practical side of just kind of the nuts and bolts of how we arrange our garage and our mindset behind our storage spaces, to the more difficult and tricky things to get through, like the emotional burden of sentimental items and getting through heirlooms or keepsakes and stuff like that. So I'm going to continue this Tips for Tidy series, highlighting some other areas of my house, and I would love to know what you would like to see first. Kids' toys, their clothing, living areas, linens, or like habits that I have to keep my home clean. I would love to continue to share those videos with you, along with the other videos that I do on this channel. The next video that I'm posting, I believe, is like a get it all done with me sort of video where I'm just checking a bunch of stuff off my to-do list. And in that video, I actually plan to show you some innovations that I have made in our crafts and like kids craft supplies, because I recently reorganized and decluttered all of that, and I can't wait to show you what I've put together for that. So be sure you are subscribed with that bell button turned on so you don't miss future videos from me. Thank you so much for spending a little part of your day here with me on my channel. It was great to have you along. Thanks for watching today's video, and I'll catch you later.
Your rules don't apply to me, no. I blow away all the pressure, measure up to what don't